everyone, welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another indie horror spotlight. Today I have with us, he's a director, and he has a movie that's streaming on Tubi right now, so definitely check it out, and it's called The Afterlife. I have with us the director, Ben Hall. Ben, welcome to the Horror Room!
Hey, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about Afterlife.
Sure, yeah. So it's a little bit offbeat from horror. I kind of live in the horror realm for the most part. I write and direct a lot of horror films, but I've been on kind of a personal journey pretty much my whole life, actually, trying to figure out what happens to us after we die. And being a filmmaker, I thought, what better way to go on this personal journey than to film it while I went on this personal journey. So I traveled all over the Midwest in the United States, talking to a wide variety of people about what they think happens to us after we die. I talked to psychiatrists, medical doctors, atheists, mediums, a past life regression hypnosis therapist, which was a pretty interesting conversation, and then just some philosophers and just a huge wide variety of people from all walks of life to ask them what they think happens to us after we die. So it is a documentary, but it's told kind of from a personal journey perspective. So you see me a lot in the film talking about how the things that I'm learning on this journey, how they're affecting me, and they're affecting my anxiety, basically, with what happens to us after we die. And that's really kind of what started that whole journey was, I'd lay awake at night, almost like in an anxiety state, thinking, man, what if I go to sleep and I don't wake up? What happens to me? Do I go to heaven? Do I go to hell? Is there a heaven or a hell? And I decided I wanted to go out and kind of ask these questions.
So my day job, I'm a mortician, so I see death a lot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the future. And yeah, I mean, I've been doing it ever since I was a teenager. So I'm 40 now, so I've been working in death. And I think about death probably more than the average person does. And yeah. And I mean, and it terrifies me. I mean, death terrifies me because I think about it more than the average person. But like you're saying, like what happens next? When I see an individual who's passed away, I see they're just a shell. I'm wondering what's next. I mean, if you're a Christian, you're going to heaven or hell. But like, what if there's not a heaven or hell? What if this is it, and it's just blankness, darkness? That's it.
Yeah, and that's really what kind of got me going in that direction. I mean, I spent most of my life, I was raised Catholic, which I would say is probably some of the reason why I ended up becoming an atheist. So I was an atheist for about 20 or 25 years, pretty staunch atheist, actually. I didn't really, or I should say this, I tried really hard not to believe in any kind of spirituality. So I can't say that I was a staunch atheist because I always had a little bit of spirituality in me, because I've seen and I've bore witness to a lot of things that I can't explain through conventional means. And so I kind of think the way my brain works, I'm kind of like two halves of a whole. One half of me is kind of analytical in my thought processes, and I have to have things that make sense, and I have to be able to explain everything, and it's this really scientific type of perspective on life. And then the other half of me has experienced all these things that I can't explain, and trying to marry those two halves in the same brain is really kind of what caused me to go on this personal journey, because I very much didn't want to believe in anything after we died. Because the analytical side of my mind couldn't make sense out of it. But then the other side of my brain would panic at that thought. Well, what do you mean there's nothing left? There's nothing afterwards. So trying to figure out a way to marry those two thought processes in my brain is what started me on that journey, or to quiet one or the other, if that's what ended up happening.
So when you were interviewing individuals for this documentary, what are some interesting ideas you ran into? You were like, wow, I never thought of that.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't say that I ran into a lot of things that I hadn't heard before, I guess, but when I heard him before, because I was trying so hard to like not believe, I heard him, but I didn't hear him. So this is the first time in my life that I've actually went out and searched for answers with an open mind, I think. And so some of the things that surprised me the most were, I really expected when I went out and spoke with these people from all these different walks of life and all these different beliefs, that there would be all of these like hard-lined, closed-minded kind of systems that all these people believed in. And I did run into that a little bit with a couple of folks, but for the most part, everybody that I talked to were so much more similar than they were different in their beliefs. They just chose a little bit of a different path, in how they get to that end result, or a different way to live their life. But I was really surprised at the similarities. We're all human beings, and our root nature is to believe in or try to explain things that are unexplainable. And typically we either do that through science or spirituality. And so even if we're using different means and different methods, the process is kind of the same. So I was really surprised to see that the similarities. That's probably the biggest thing that surprised me. And then, some of the experiences I had with this were pretty eye-opening. So, for example, I told you that I interviewed a past life regression hypnosis specialist, and so of course I'm on a personal journey. So I decided to become hypnotized myself. So I actually did a past life regression hypnosis session with this gentleman.
Wow.
And there's a little bit of that in the film, but it's a lot more boring to watch than you'd think. It's just me laying back with my eyes closed, and he's talking quietly and I'm answering quietly. So it didn't make for the greatest watch. So there's only a little bit of it in there. But for me personally, what I went through in that, it absolutely floored me. The things that I saw during that past life regression hypnosis session really had a profound effect on what possibilities there are. And the cool thing about it is, I went into it with an open mind, so I think that's the reason why it worked. But there was still an analytical part of me. It was like, I'm pretty imaginative. I write scripts for, for part of my living, so I'm a horror filmmaker. I could be pretty creative. So maybe my brain's making this up, or maybe he's asking me leading questions and I'm just not realizing it. But I was lucky enough to be able to film it all. And so in watching it back, he didn't ask me any leading questions at all. The only kind of questions that he asked were questions like, okay, what do you see now? Or, and then what happened? Okay, what do you see now? What do you want to do with that information? Do you want to move forward? Do you want to go back? So he didn't ask me leading questions at all. And so it was either my extremely vivid imagination making things up, or I went somewhere that I could not explain. And I lean toward the idea of going somewhere that I can't explain, only because the things that I saw were things that I just don't understand how my mind could have created, because it's things that I did not expect. I saw things that I never would have imagined that I could have imagined, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah,
so that was
I've always thought of. I can imagine it's eye-opening because, like, hypnosis, like, trying to quit smoking cigarettes, and like everybody, I've had numerous people tell me hypnosis and quit smoking. President Obama's one person quit smoking cigarettes through hypnosis. But yeah, what everybody keeps saying is you have to go into that with an open mind. You can't think, oh, well, this is not real or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did that change your views? I mean, was that a huge?
It did. Yeah, it did change my perspective on things quite a bit. I mean, there were several things that changed my mind. and the interesting thing about it is so I went through that, and it was very profound, very eye-opening. So it changed me quite a bit. But that feeling wears off after a while when you get back into the day-to-day life, and so the analytical brain starts creeping back in a little bit, even when you've been through something as profound as that. Your reasoning will come back, and you'll try to figure out, your brain or my brain will try to figure out a way to reason it out. Well, it's because of this, it's because of that, so you try to figure out a way to make sense out of it from a non-spiritual perspective, or at least I did. But I even today, I can't explain it away. And the interesting thing is I can remember vividly everything that I saw during that past life hypnosis session. It's still just as vivid in my memory as it was then. And I recorded the whole thing, so like everything that I said, everything that I saw. So I go back to it periodically and watch it just to refresh my memory. But I found that I don't need to, because I still remember all of it just as clear as the day that it happened. And I want to say I went through that hypnosis session probably close to 2 years ago now, actually, because it was one of the first interviews that we conducted. So it's been about 2 years, and I still remember it very vividly. But yeah, it had a pretty profound effect on me. I I won't say that it lessened my anxiety at all because of some of the things that I saw, but it certainly made it. Now I'm open to the idea, more open to the idea of there being something after we die.
So this is a question. Actually, is your opinion. So in this country, I mean, when it comes to religion, we're a very religious country. Whether it's Scientology, Christian, Catholic,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. And all those religions are talking about dying. They really are. If you sit in church, everything is talking about dying. But why is it, as Americans, we are like talking about death? The actual act of death is so taboo.
That's a good question. That's another thing that I was trying to figure out on this journey as well, because it's been kind of taboo for me as well. Now through this journey, I had some memories that got brought back up to light on me that kind of explained why maybe death was such a frightening thing for me. When I was a really, really little kid, my great grandmother passed away, and I was probably 3 or 4, and I went to the funeral with my mother. And my grandfather was a pretty stern man, and he wanted me to have the opportunity to say goodbye to his mother, my great grandmother. And so he dragged me kicking and screaming up to the front of the casket. Like I wanted nothing to do with it because I was scared. I knew it was a dead body. I was, old enough to know that. But he dragged me kicking and screaming up there, and he basically pushed me into the casket so I could say goodbye. And it was pretty traumatic. And I think that probably had an effect on my fear of death moving forward. I won't say it's the only thing, of course, that made me afraid of it, but I think that's probably where it started. As far as other people, I don't know. It's been something that has frightened a lot of people. I don't know if it's well, I mean, most people are scared of the unknown. I think that probably has a little bit to do with it. And I also think that I won't say just the United States, but I'll say Western civilization. We've done a really good job of separating spirituality from our everyday lives, and spirituality from medicine, and spirituality from psychiatry, and spirituality from healing. So we've created this huge division between spirituality and every other aspect of our life, and I think that's created some taboos with spirituality. I don't even just say organized religion; I'll just say spirituality in particular, and so I think that's caused some fear of death because people don't understand it. They've forgotten how to understand it, and we're so far removed from it. If you think, 50, even as little as 50 years ago, when you had somebody pass, they passed in the home. In your home, we had multi-generational living. If your father or your mother passed, or your grandparents, they were typically in the house. It was treated like a solemn event, but it was more intimate. I mean, Irish folks used to have wakes. They display the passed person in the home for several days after they pass. Or like for their funeral process, as a way to say goodbye. But it's so sanitary and so clinical now that we've removed a lot of the emotional and spiritual attachment to death. And I think that's probably why people are scared now. That's a very roundabout way to answer that question. I got the answer.
But the other thing is, too, I'm going to, just from working in the death care industry, one of the things is, too, that I have noticed, like I'm about what you said, a lot of people died at home, which means, you had your grandmother in the house, your grandparents in the house, and you took care of them until they died in the house. Mm-hmm. But now, in especially Western society, more than likely, your parents or your grandparents are in some type of facility, whether it be, assisted living, a nursing home. People do not take care of their parents in their house. So when the death does occur, they're not there for it. So And I think that it makes. I think I agree with you. That makes death less intimate.
It does, and I also think that and every step of that process. I mean, a lot of times I think the families are there at the moment of death. They get called in. Hey, it's close time. It's close to time. Your loved one's going to pass, unless it's something that's sudden and tragic, like a heart attack or a car accident or something. But if it's just due to old age or natural causes, typically you have an opportunity to say your goodbyes. But usually it's that real short period where the goodbyes are said. All of the stuff leading up to that is usually, the death part of it is treated in a clinical fashion, and then everything after that is treated in a clinical fashion. Whereas I think, even as little as 50 years ago, even though, morticians were used and the medical field was involved, I think the families were quite a lot more involved as well. Post-mortem, they were quite a bit more involved. And that's not the case anymore. Now, if somebody dies in their home, 911's called, depending on the circumstances, the medical examiner may show up or whatever the case is, and the body is whisked away, and I mean, my mother passed several years ago, and that's kind of how that went. We were there with her at the end, and we were able to say our goodbyes, but as soon as we made that call, she was whisked away in a matter of moments. And then basically everything from that point forward was treated very clinically. Even the funeral was a very clinical ordeal. Everything's very prepared, very organized. Our funerary system in the United States, specifically in the United States, is very, very organized and very well put together. Very expensive too, but and I think it's to try to. I think the intentions are good, and I don't know a lot about the funerary process, so I'm just speaking from an ignorant opinion. But I think the intentions are good. I think the intentions are to try to relieve people's grief, but I think that with it being so sanitary and well, not sanitary is not the right word. So clinical that
it's a business.
The grieving process isn't there as much as it could be, and the closeness to the person after they've passed is kind of left in some capacity. It's not there anymore because it's so. I'm trying to find the right word. It's not sanitary, but it starts with an S, and I can't think of what it is. But I'll think about it. 20 minutes after this after this call.
But even dealing with the funeral industry, I mean, the funeral part is business. It is. Yes, we're going to grieve you through this process, but there's a price tag attached to it, and like you say, it's an expensive price tag, and it's only getting more expensive. But it's an expensive price tag put to it, and the history of the funeral industry. I mean, the funerals in this country, like you said, 60 years ago, someone died. They sat in the house. The mortician would come and put what is called a cooling board down, which is pretty much a board that had ice in it. And that person sat in the house for days, and family came by and visited, and then from there, the family would take the body to their local cemetery or the family grave, and the men would actually dig the grave and place their loved one into the grave. That's all gone now.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that removal from that is what has caused a lot of people to, it's heightened their fear of death, because it's not something a lot of people deal with on a regular basis anymore. I think other countries have a better handle on how to handle or how to care for loved ones through that whole process, better than a lot of the Western societies do now, for sure. We're one of the healthiest, the Western society, we've never been healthier. We live to a longer age than we ever have in the history of mankind, but I do think that there's a little bit of a price to be paid with that, in the sense that we've kind of lost that emotional connection to death.
So after doing this documentary, you got to speak to a lot of people in death. You got hypnotized. What is your view of the afterlife now? What do you think the afterlife looks like?
Sure. So it depends on what day you ask me.
Okay.
It still changes a little bit. It's funny, I did find a lot of comfort in the process of trying to go out and learn learn what other people's thoughts are. And I was able to find some answers that did satisfy my curiosity quite a bit and kind of quelled my fears and my anxiety a little bit. But I have to say that what it seemed to me like was, the human brain can't really conceive of what happens to us after we die. Number one, because we die, we don't know. And so I just don't think that we're able to comprehend it. Our brains aren't able to comprehend it. And so when people are exposed to like near-death experiences or really strong spiritual connections, or if they go through past life hypnosis regression, whatever the case is, if they're subjected to their past lives, or if they are experience paranormal events, whatever the case is, as we've done that through history, we've done our best to explain it. But we're not very good at explaining things like that because we can't comprehend them from our level of existence, I guess, to sound a little more spiritual. So we do our best to do that. And depending on what area in the world you are, depending on your upbringing, depending on the time of human evolution, when you experience these things, different religions were born out of that to try to explain it to the best of our ability. But at their core, what I found, in my personal opinion, is most of these religions, when you peel back all the ceremony and you peel back all of the human intervention with it and all of the greed, the organized religion aspect of it, and you get to the core of most of these religions, most of them are born all from the same type of experience that I think we as humans have had with the paranormal or the spiritual, whatever you want to call it. And I think my personal belief after talking to all these people is that there is a creator, but it's not a creator like what the Christian religion would, or the Jewish religion, or most religions would explain. I think it's just the universe is one giant essence or one giant creator. And we're born of it, we experience life, and then when we pass on, we become it again. And we are afforded the opportunity to repeat life as many times as we want to gain more experience and more understanding of our creator and the universe. So we are all one and we are all separate kind of at the same time. So when we die, we become the creator again. So when we die, we are absorbed back into that creator. And that's the part that my analytical brain doesn't really understand. I believe this now, but my analytical brain has a hard time believing how, or understanding how I could be myself, but also be of that at the same time. And so that still gives me a little bit of anxiety, but I do think that when we die, we do just kind of become absorbed back into that general consciousness that is the universe.
And we don't come back as something else or someone else.
Oh, we could. Yes, I do. I absolutely believe in reincarnation. I don't think that, again, just my personal opinion, I don't think that, I think we're offered that as a choice or as an option. If we want to live again, we can. If we don't, we can remain in the consciousness, in the general consciousness of the universe. But I think that most of us probably come back again and again, because why wouldn't we? Life is a wonderful thing to experience, especially from our perspective. I love life. I try to get everything out of my life that I can every single day. And I still go to bed every night wishing I could have done more or experienced more, so what a beautiful thing for us to be able to enjoy and experience, and to be able to create things in this life that we have and enjoy other people's creations that in this life. It's what a gift that we're offered. So why wouldn't you want to come back to this again and again if given the opportunity?
Yeah, Ben, it's an off the wall crazy question. If you were to come back again, would you want to experience it as a different gender or race?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I think that there's options for that, and sure. I don't see any reason why you couldn't. Like I said, during this journey, I went through the hypnosis session for past lives, and I did some other things that are a little kooky too, trying to figure out what's going on with the afterlife. And I have to say, I'm quite confident that once you pass gender, race, religion. I mean, everything those are all human constructs, so to speak. So, it's a human way of looking at things. Once you pass on, all of that fades away. You are spirit form, and none of that stuff, none of those petty differences matter anymore. Those are physical differences that don't exist anymore. So, and given that, once you're in a spiritual state, if you're given an opportunity to be born again as a different sex or a different race, I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, especially if you're genuinely a curious individual, why wouldn't you want to experience as much as you can?
Exactly.
So and I'd be all for that, sure.
Yeah, I mean, each time I would come back as a different race, gender, or even born in a different country or something. I would want to. I know what this is like. You know what I mean? So, let me try something new out.
Yeah, and that's the only part of it that really gave me a little bit of anxiety was, when I was an atheist, I had a lot of anxiety. I was like, well, once you die, there's nothing, and so that gave me anxiety about, trying to get as much out of my current life, because I'm like, I only get one shot at this. If there's nothing after this, that's it. I better enjoy every single moment that I could. And I would stress about that. I'd get very anxious about that. I wouldn't want to sit around and watch TV because that's wasting this one opportunity that I have. And then, when I experienced this journey and I started finding out about this stuff, I did have some relief from that for quite a while, actually. But then the anxiety started creeping back in because I realized that, I don't remember any of my past lives on a day-to-day basis. And when I die, I become part of the general consciousness again, which means I'm going to remember this life, but I won't be myself anymore. And then when I'm born again, if I choose to be reincarnated again, then I won't remember this life either, or any of the other lives either. So it's not that much better than atheism. So I started getting anxious again. I was like, wow, if I can't remember any of this stuff, from life to life, I may as well cease to exist, because I kind of do in a way. So, some of the anxiety started creeping back in after that, but I deal with it.
Listen, fitness is an interesting topic, man. And listen, when Michael Joyce sent me over information, the contact for interview, I was like, oh yes, I gotta have this guy on, because talking about the afterlife and death and all that fascinates me, because I'm curious, and I hope there's something else out there. I hope it's we don't fade to black. I don't know what that something else may be. Maybe heaven or hell, or maybe we go to a creator, or maybe I be reincarnated. And if I was going to be reincarnated, I think I'm going to do a different. I think I'm going to be a white woman. That's I think that's what I think I'm going to come back as.
Yeah. So, well, you never know. You may have been a white woman in a past life, and you just don't know it.
Exactly.
So, who
knows? Ben, where can everyone find you, my friend?
You can find me. I am the owner of Silver Compass Studios, so you can find me on most of the social media outlets. We're on TikTok as long as it lasts. Facebook, Instagram. We have a website, silvercompassstudios.com. Just look me up. I mean, we're always doing all kinds of stuff. Like I said, my normal filmography are horror films. So and that's mostly what I work in. And this is the second documentary that I actually ever shot. So everything else that you'll see that I do is horror related horror films. But the two documentaries that I shot, this one, which is called Afterlife, and I shot one several years ago that was about the music scene in my local hometown. So it was kind of a passion project. So, but everything else is horror related.
And everything's on Tubi, right?
Yes. Afterlife's on Tubi. Everything else that I've shot, I do have another film that's coming out soon. It's called Tales of the End Times. It's an anthology, and I have a short horror film that's part of that anthology. Ash Hamilton from Horror Fix, it actually is the one that helmed that. I live like 30 minutes from his house, so I'm pretty good friends with him. He and I get together all the time and brainstorm really crazy ideas for horror-related stuff. But he and I are pretty good friends, and he asked me if I wanted to shoot a short film for this anthology that he put together, and I did, and we did a screener for it a couple weeks ago. And yeah, we're getting some pretty good traction on it, and it's a wonderful film. Everybody did a great job with their shorts on it. Ash did a wonderful job with the wraparound on it. It's absolutely crazy, and it's all about the end of the world. It's about it all takes place on the final day that the Earth exists. So all the short stories that you see in the wraparound you see are all these different stories that happen to different people the last day that the Earth is around. So it's pretty kooky, pretty wild. Some of them are pretty gory, some of them are funny. But yeah, it's just a good old fashioned horror film. It's going to be a lot of fun when that releases, and that'll be coming out sometime before the end of the year, I think.
I can't wait. I think I have Ash coming on next week. So
oh yeah, okay, yeah. You'll have to tell him I said hi. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be talking about EFT. So a little sneak peek to that for your viewers for next week. That's going to be a fun film.
Ben, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, man. Listen,
thank you so much for the opportunity.
Listen,
I'm sorry,
everybody,
cut you off.
Go ahead. No, you're fine.
Off, Ben, sorry.
You're good, buddy. Everybody, get over there and follow Ben on social media and on his website, as well as get your asses over to Tubi, type in Ben Hurl, and check out his horror movies, as well as check out Afterlife, his new documentary.
Thank you.
Everybody, you're welcome. Everybody, thank you for coming to the Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce. That's Ben Hall. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.